The night I inherited $30 million, my family stopped seeing me as Christine, the daughter and sister they grew up with. From that moment on, I was nothing more than a prize they were desperate to claim. I'm Christine. I'm 26 years old. And if someone had told me a year ago that my life would get flipped upside down by $30 million, I would have laughed in their face. Back then, I thought money was just money. Something you worked for, something that kept the lights on, something that made life a little easier, but didn't change who you were deep down. I thought family was stronger than greed, stronger than envy, stronger than, well, the kind of poison that seeps in the second you hold the keys to a fortune. Turns out I was wrong. Very wrong. I grew up in a middle-class suburb in Pennsylvania. Nothing fancy, just rows of houses with porches and kids playing in the yard. My parents, Richard and Donna, worked hard, Dad in real estate, Mom teaching at an elementary school, and they always preached the value of earning your keep. I bought into it too. I worked my way through college, sometimes pulling double shifts at the coffee shop near campus just to cover books and rent. My older brother Luke didn't exactly do the same. He was the golden boy, the one Mom bragged about at every family barbecue even when he hadn't done anything worth bragging about. And then there was my younger sister Amber, sweet but spoiled, who could bat her lashes and get anything she wanted. But the real anchors in my life were my grandparents, Evelyn and Charles. They lived about an hour away, in a big old colonial-style house that looked like it had been frozen in time. My grandma Evelyn was this elegant woman with silver hair and the kind of laugh that made you feel like everything in the world was going to be okay. My grandpa Charles was quieter, more serious, but every now and then you'd catch him cracking a dry joke that would leave everyone in stitches. They weren't flashy people. They didn't flaunt wealth or talk about money. They grew their own vegetables, clipped coupons, and wore clothes that had been in their closets since the 80s. That's why when the lawyer read out the will, I nearly fell off my chair. $30 million. All of it left to me. Not Luke. Not Amber. Not my parents. Me. I remember gripping the edge of my seat, my palms sweating, my heart pounding like a drumline in my chest. My parents' faces drained of color, then flushed red. Luke's jaw clenched so hard I thought his teeth might shatter. Amber just stared at me like I'd suddenly transformed into a stranger. The lawyer kept talking. Something about trusts and disbursement schedules, but all I could hear was the sound of my own blood rushing through my ears. Why me? That was the question burning in everyone's eyes, including mine. Why me? Later that night, when the house had emptied out and I was sitting on my grandparents' old couch, surrounded by the smell of lavender and wood polish, I found a letter. It was tucked inside a photo album, addressed to me in my grandma's looping handwriting. My hands shook as I unfolded it. "Dearest Christine," it began. "You have always been the one with the strongest heart, the one who listens, the one who values people over possessions. We trust you to use this gift wisely, not for greed but for good. We know it may cause tension, but we believe you will stand firm. You were our light in dark times, and now we hope to be yours." I cried so hard reading that letter, not because of the money, but because of the trust they had in me, because of the love that poured from every word. I promised myself then and there that I'd live up to their faith in me. But promises don't mean much when the people around you see dollar signs instead of your face. The first confrontation happened at my parents' house, just a few days after the funeral. We were sitting at the kitchen table, the same table where I used to do homework while Mom graded papers. The air was thick with unspoken words. Finally, Dad broke the silence. "Christine," he said, his tone stiff. "You understand this money isn't really yours?" I blinked. "Excuse me?" He leaned forward, folding his hands. "Your grandparents didn't mean for you to keep it all. They wanted it for the family, for us, for your brother and sister. You can't possibly think you're going to keep $30 million all to yourself." My mom nodded, her eyes cold. Sweetheart, you're too young to handle that kind of responsibility. We've been managing money our whole lives. We know what to do with it. You need to hand it over so it doesn't get wasted. I sat there, stunned. It's not wasted if I use it responsibly. And it was their decision, not mine. They trusted me. Luke slammed his fist on the table. Bullshit. They must have been manipulated. You probably got in their ear, convinced them to cut us out. Don't act so innocent. My cheeks burned hot. I didn't even know they had that kind of money. Do you really think I would have spent years scraping by on minimum wage jobs if I knew I was inheriting millions? Amber crossed her arms, pouting. It's not fair. You've always been their favorite. And now you get rewarded while the rest of us get nothing? I looked at her, my baby sister who I used to tuck into bed, who I used to protect from bullies. And I barely recognized her. Dad's voice hardened. Christine, we're not asking. We're telling you. Sign it over. I stared at them, at the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, and I realized something in me had snapped. No, I whispered. I won't. The room went dead silent. That no was the beginning of a war. At first, it was little things. Cold shoulders at family dinners. Nasty texts from Luke calling me a selfish brat. Amber crying on Instagram Live about how betrayed she felt. But then it escalated. My parents showed up at my apartment unannounced, pounding on the door, demanding I talk. I stopped answering their calls. My mom left voicemails laced with guilt trips, telling me I was tearing the family apart. And then there was Derek. Derek had been my boyfriend for almost a year. He was charming, funny, and had this easy smile that made me melt. We'd met at a friend's birthday party and hit it off instantly. I thought he was different, that he loved me for me. But after the inheritance, things started to shift. He wanted to know details, how the money was invested, when I'd get access to certain accounts, what my plans were. At first I thought he was just curious, maybe even protective. But one night over dinner, he said something that chilled me to the bone. You know, babe, if you really loved me, you'd put my name on the trust too. I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth. What? He leaned back, smirking. I mean, we're serious, right? We're building a future together. What's yours is mine. Don't you trust me? I wanted to believe I'd misheard him, that the man I loved wasn't just another person trying to stake a claim on my grandparents' gift. But the look in his eyes told me otherwise. It broke something inside me. That night, lying awake in bed, I felt like the walls were closing in. My family against me, my boyfriend showing cracks in his mask, and me holding onto a fortune I never asked for, trying desperately to cling to my independence, my sanity, my sense of self. I thought about my grandma's letter, about her faith in me, and I made another promise. I wasn't going to let them win. Not my parents. Not Luke, not Amber, not Derek. This was my life, my inheritance, my choice. But as I would soon learn, protecting it would come at a cost I never could have imagined. I thought saying no to my parents that night would be the end of it. I thought they'd get angry, maybe cut me off emotionally, but eventually accept that my grandparents' decision was final. Families fight, sure, but blood always wins out, right? That's what I believed. Or maybe what I wanted to believe. Turns out when $30 million is on the line, blood doesn't mean a damn thing. A week after that first confrontation, I came home from work and noticed my apartment door looked different. The lock was scratched, like someone had been messing with it. My stomach dropped. Inside, everything looked fine at first glance. But then I realized drawers had been opened, files gone through, my jewelry box tipped over. Nothing big was missing. My laptop was still there, my TV untouched. But it wasn't a robbery. It was a search. Someone had been looking for something specific. I didn't even have to guess who. I reported it to the police, but without forced entry, they shrugged it off. Probably a friend who borrowed a key, the officer said, typing lazily into his computer. I walked out of that precinct shaking with anger and fear. A friend? My own family. More like, after that, I moved my grandparents' letter and the trust paperwork into a safety deposit box at the bank. I didn't trust keeping anything in my apartment anymore. I even changed my locks, but that didn't stop me from jumping at every creak in the night. Derek didn't help either. He kept pushing, asking questions about account numbers, about the financial advisor handling the estate. When I told him to drop it, he got sulky, passive-aggressive. One night, he stormed out, muttering something about me being paranoid and selfish. I sat on the couch afterwards, staring at the door, wondering how long it would take before I had to admit the truth. He wasn't with me for love anymore, if he ever had been. The only people who seemed genuinely happy for me were my friends from college, especially my roommate from those days, Kayla. She was the kind of girl who kept it real, never sugar-coated anything, and she reminded me constantly, "Christine, don't you dare let them bully you. That money is yours. Your grandparents wanted you to have it. Screw anyone who says otherwise." Kayla's words kept me afloat, but I still felt like I was living in a nightmare. Then came Thanksgiving. Every year, we'd gather at my parents' place. Turkey, stuffing, pies, the works. I debated not going, but some part of me wanted to believe maybe we could put the inheritance aside for one night. Just be a family again? Big mistake. The minute I walked in, I knew I'd walked into an ambush. My dad was sitting at the head of the table like a king, ready to deliver a decree. Mom barely looked at me, her lips pressed thin. Luke leaned against the wall with his arms crossed, glaring. Amber didn't even fake a smile. Dinner was tense, quiet, the clinking of silverware louder than the conversation. Finally, after dessert, Dad cleared his throat. "Christine," he said, "we've given you time to think. Now we need an answer." My fork froze halfway to my mouth. Answer to what? Luke snorted. "Don't play dumb." "The money." Mom leaned forward, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Honey, we've spoken to an attorney. There are ways to challenge the will. Unless you want this drag through the courts, you should really consider doing the right thing." I stared at them, stunned. "The right thing? You mean giving up everything Grandma and Grandpa trusted me with? That's your idea, right?" Amber slammed her hands on the table. "You're ruining this family. Don't you care about us at all?" That was the moment I lost it. My voice shook, but it came out louder than I expected. "Do you care about me? About what I've been through? About the pressure you're putting on me? Because it doesn't feel like it. All you care about is money. You don't see me anymore. You just see dollar signs." The room went silent. My dad's face turned red, veins bulging at his temple. "If you don't hand it over willingly," he growled, "we'll make sure you regret it." Those words echoed in my head all night. "We'll make sure you regret it." My own father, threatening me. That was when I realized I wasn't safe anymore. I left Derek the next morning, packed my things into boxes, loaded them into my car, and drove off while he was still asleep. He called me nonstop after, left voicemails swinging between apologies and anger. But I didn't listen. I couldn't. I needed space. I also started seeing someone new. I didn't mean to, not at first. His name was Ryan, and he worked at the bank where I'd opened my safety deposit box. He was kind, thoughtful, the kind of guy who noticed when I was anxious and tried to make me laugh. At first I kept him at arm's length. I couldn't handle another person wanting me for my money. But Ryan never asked about the inheritance. He just asked about me, my job, my favorite books, whether I preferred coffee or tea. It felt normal, safe. And God, I needed that. But safety doesn't last long when greed is eating your family alive. A few weeks later, I was driving home from work when a car swerved into my lane, forcing me off the road. I slammed the brakes, heart pounding, as the other car sped off. I sat there shaking, staring at the skid marks, wondering if it had been an accident or something else. That night, I got a text from an unknown number. This isn't over. I didn't sleep a second. By Christmas, I'd stopped talking to my parents entirely. I spent the holiday with Kayla and Ryan, laughing, drinking wine, trying to pretend everything was normal. But deep down, I knew my family wasn't done with me, and I was right. In January, I got served a legal notice. My parents, Luke and Amber, were contesting the will. I sat in my lawyer's office, clutching the papers, my hands trembling. "Can they really do this?" I asked. My lawyer, a sharp woman named Ms. Collins, sighed. "They can try, but the will is airtight. Your grandparents were of sound mind, and everything was properly documented. It'll be a fight, but you have the law on your side." I nodded, but my chest felt tight. It wasn't about the law. It was about the fact that my own family was dragging me through court for money that was never theirs to begin with. The months that followed were brutal. Depositions, hearings, endless paperwork. My parents painted me as manipulative, claiming I'd influenced my grandparents in their final days. Luke testified that I'd always been calculating. Amber cried on the stand about how I'd stolen her future. Every word felt like a knife in my back. Ryan held my hand through it all, whispering encouragement, reminding me I wasn't alone. Still, I cried myself to sleep more nights than I could count. One night, after a particularly nasty day in court, I broke down in Ryan's apartment. "Why are they doing this to me?" I sobbed. "I'm their daughter, their sister. Don't I mean more to them than money?" Ryan hugged me tight, his voice steady. "Christine, some people let greed blind them. But you're stronger than that. You have something they'll never have. Integrity. That's why your grandparents chose you. And that's why you'll win." I wanted to believe him. But as the trial went on, as the lies piled higher and higher, I started to wonder if winning would cost me everything else. By the time spring rolled around, the lawsuit had chewed me up and spit me out. I was exhausted, living on caffeine and nerves, spending more time in courtrooms than in my own apartment. Every time I sat across from my parents, Luke and Amber, it was like staring at strangers wearing my family's faces. Their eyes were cold, their words rehearsed. They weren't mom and dad or my brother and sister anymore. They were plaintiffs, and I was their enemy. I remember one afternoon when Amber took the stand again. She wore this pastel pink dress, the kind she used to wear to Easter Sunday, her hair in soft curls, looking every bit the innocent youngest child. She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue as she told the judge how I had manipulated our grandparents, how I'd isolated them in their final years. I sat there, gripping the armrest of my chair so tightly my knuckles turned white. Lies. Every word. A lie. When it was my turn to testify, I told the truth. I talked about afternoons in my grandma's garden, learning how to plant tulips. I talked about how my grandpa had taught me to balance a checkbook, how he'd slipped me $20 when I was broke in college. I told the court about the letter my grandma had left me, her words about trust and love. Miss Collins handed the letter to the judge, and for a moment, the whole room went quiet. But even with the truth on my side, doubt crept in. What if the judge believed them? What if money really did speak louder than honesty? Ryan kept me grounded. Every night after court, he'd make us dinner. Simple stuff like spaghetti or grilled cheese, and let me vent until I ran out of words. He never judged, never told me I was overreacting. He just listened. And sometimes, when the weight of it all felt unbearable, he'd pull me close and whisper, "You're not alone, Christine. I'm here." That was the thing about Ryan. He never asked for anything. Not once. No questions about account balances, no hints about sharing the fortune. Just me and him, building something real. And that terrified me almost as much as it comforted me. Because what if he was the exception? What if everyone else in my life only saw me as a walking ATM? The trial dragged on for months. By summer, I was a shell of myself. My job suffered, my friendships thinned, even Kayla started to worry. "Chris, you've got to take care of yourself," she said one night over drinks. "They're trying to break you down, and you're letting them." I don't know how not to, I admitted, staring into my glass. It's like every time I think I've got my footing, they pull the rug out again. Kayla reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Then you hold on tighter. You've already survived more than most people ever will. Don't let them steal your spirit too. Her words stuck with me. By July, the judge finally ruled. The will stood. The inheritance was mine. When the decision was read, relief washed over me like a tidal wave. But it was bittersweet. Across the courtroom, I saw my mom's lips press into a thin line, my dad's fists clench. Luke stormed out before the gavel even fell. Amber sobbed into her lawyer's shoulder like she'd just lost her whole world. I won. Legally, I won. But I lost something too. My family. In the weeks that followed, the silence was deafening. No calls, no texts, no invites. For the first time in my life, I wasn't part of the family group chat. It hurt more than I wanted to admit. I'd fought so hard to keep my independence. But independence is lonely when it means losing the people who raised you. Ryan tried to fill the void. He'd take me on weekend trips, surprise me with little things, coffee from my favorite cafe, flowers, just because. One night, we sat on his balcony watching the city lights, and he said, "You know, Christine, you can build your own family, one that actually deserves you." I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time, I saw a future that wasn't haunted by betrayal. A future with someone who wanted me, not my bank account. My heart ached with both hope and fear, because falling in love again felt like stepping onto thin ice, never knowing if it would crack beneath me. But I let myself fall anyway. Still, my parents weren't done. In August, I got a letter from their lawyer. They were appealing. I crumpled it in my fist, tears burning my eyes. Why can't they just let it go? I cried to Ryan. Why can't they just accept that it's over? He held me close, his voice steady. Because they can't. They'll never stop wanting what they can't have. But you can't let them control you. Not anymore. I wanted to believe him. But the fear gnawed at me. How far would they go? Would they try to ruin me financially? Would they show up at my apartment again? Would they hurt me? One night, I was walking home when I felt someone following me. My pulse quickened, my steps sped up, but the footsteps behind me matched my pace. I ducked into a brightly lit diner, heart hammering. From the window, I watched a dark figure linger outside, then finally disappear into the night. I didn't tell Ryan. I didn't want him to worry, but deep down I knew. My family wasn't just fighting me in court anymore. They were trying to scare me into submission, and it was working. I started looking over my shoulder everywhere I went. I double-checked the locks at night, left lights on when I wasn't home. I hated living like that, hated feeling hunted. But what choice did I have? Then one evening, out of nowhere, Amber showed up at my door. She looked different. Pale, worn down, her eyes swollen from crying. "Christine," she whispered. "Can I come in?" Against my better judgment, I let her. We sat at my kitchen table, the same spot where my parents had once demanded I sign over the money. Amber fidgeted with her hands, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice cracking. "I didn't want any of this. I didn't know what else to do. Mom and Dad, they pressured me. Luke, too. They said I'd be cut off if I didn't go along with it." I stared at her, my heart torn in two. Was this real? Or another manipulation? "Amber," I said softly, "you went on the stand and lied about me. You looked me in the eye and called me a thief." She sobbed harder. "I know, and I hate myself for it. But I'm scared, Christine. They won't stop. Not until they get what they want. Please, you have to be careful." Something in her voice made me believe her. For the first time, I saw my little sister again. Not the spoiled, angry girl from court, but the kid I used to play dress-up with, the one who cried when I left for college. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Then help me stop them." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. That night, for the first time in months, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe I wasn't as alone as I thought. Maybe the family I lost wasn't completely gone. But hope is dangerous. Because it makes you vulnerable, and soon I'd learn just how dangerous it could be. When Amber left my apartment that night, I sat alone at the kitchen table long after the door clicked shut, staring at the half-empty wine glass she'd left behind. My mind was racing. Could I trust her? Or was this just another ploy, another way to lure me into a trap? But the tears in her eyes had felt real. The tremble in her hands, the way her voice cracked when she said she hated herself for lying, that wasn't something you could fake easily. At least not Amber. Still, I couldn't ignore the warning she left me with. They won't stop. And she was right. The appeal hearing loomed in the fall, and the tension around me grew so thick I could practically taste it in the air. My parents hadn't spoken to me directly in months, but I could feel their presence everywhere. Anonymous texts, cars idling near my apartment late at night, whispers that people I barely knew were suddenly asking about me and my money. I lived in a constant state of paranoia, checking over my shoulder every time I left the house. Never sure who I could trust, Ryan kept trying to calm me down, reminding me that the law was on my side, that my grandparents' wishes were clear, that there was no way the appeal would overturn the will. He was steady, solid, like a rock, when everything else in my life felt like quicksand. But I could tell it was wearing on him too. He'd hold me at night, but sometimes I caught him staring off, like he was trying to figure out how to protect me from something he couldn't control. One evening, as we sat on his couch with a half-watched movie playing in the background, I whispered, "What if they hurt me, Ryan? What if this goes beyond courtrooms and lawyers?" He pulled me closer, his hand warm against the back of my neck. "Then I'll be here. No matter what, I won't let them touch you." For a moment, I believed him. But things got worse before they got better. 2 weeks before the appeal hearing, I came home to find my apartment door wide open. My stomach dropped. Inside, everything was overturned. Drawers yanked out, clothes tossed everywhere, my mattress slashed open. It looked like a hurricane had ripped through. My first instinct was to run to call 911, but then I saw it on the kitchen counter. Written in red marker on a torn piece of cardboard, "Sign it over, or next time it won't just be your stuff." My hands shook so badly, I dropped my phone twice before I managed to dial the police. They came, took a report, shrugged again about how it might have been a prank. A prank. $30 million at stake, my whole life torn apart, and they thought it was a prank. I spent that night at Ryan's place, curled up on his couch with a blanket, my body trembling no matter how tightly he held me. Sleep wouldn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that cardboard, those words, the threat behind them. The next morning, Amber called. "Christine," she whispered urgently, "you have to get out of there. Mom and Dad are desperate. Luke's talking about doing something crazy. I don't know what, but it's not good." My throat tightened. "Why are you telling me this?" "Why now?" "Because I can't keep going along with it. I can't be part of this anymore. You're my sister. I don't want anything to happen to you." Her voice cracked. And for the first time in years, I believed her. She was scared too. I met her at a diner on the edge of town later that day. She slid into the booth across from me, her eyes darting around nervously like she expected our parents to burst through the door any second. "They think if they scare you enough, you'll cave," she said, clutching her coffee cup with both hands. "But Christine, they're not bluffing anymore. They've talked about following you, about making you look unstable in court, even about—" She stopped, biting her lip. "Even about what?" I pressed, my heart pounding, her eyes filled with tears. "About staging something, an accident. I told them I wouldn't be part of it, but they don't listen to me. Please, you have to be careful." I sat back, numb. My own family plotting accidents, plotting to destroy me for money. The people who raised me, the people I used to love. Something inside me hardened then. Fear turned into anger. Anger turned into resolve. "They're not going to win," I said quietly, more to myself than to Amber. "Not in court, not in life. I won't let them." The day of the appeal hearing, I walked into that courtroom with my head held high. Ryan was at my side, Amber sat behind me, and Ms. Collins carried herself like the professional warrior she was. Across the aisle, my parents looked smug. Luke scowling, their lawyer stacking papers like ammunition. The hearing was brutal. Their attorney spun lies like a spider weaving a web, painting me as unstable, greedy, manipulative. My stomach churned as I listened, but I refused to break. When it was my turn, I stood, my voice steady, and told the truth again. About my grandparents' love, about their trust in me, about the letter that had carried me through sleepless nights. And then, in a move I didn't see coming, Amber took the stand. She told the truth. She admitted she'd been pressured, that Mom and Dad had forced her to lie in the original trial, that Luke had threatened to cut her off if she didn't cooperate. She told the court she regretted every word, that she believed in me, that she knew our grandparents had chosen me for a reason. The look on my parents' faces was pure rage. My mom's mouth dropped open. My dad's fists clenched on the table. Luke muttered a curse loud enough for the whole courtroom to hear. By the end of that day, the judge dismissed the appeal. The inheritance remained mine, but this time it didn't feel like just a win on paper. It felt final. It felt like the door had slammed shut on their schemes. When we walked out of the courthouse, the sun was setting, painting the sky in streaks of pink and gold. Ryan slipped his arm around me, pressing a kiss to my temple. "It's over," he whispered, but I knew better. Court battles might have ended, but the scars would stay. The months that followed were about rebuilding. Rebuilding my sense of safety, my identity, my future. I moved into a new apartment in the city, one with security cameras and a doorman. I started therapy, working through the trauma of betrayal and fear. Slowly, I started to feel like myself again. Ryan was there every step of the way, patient and steady. One night, as we sat on my new balcony with a bottle of wine, he looked at me with those soft brown eyes and said, "Christine, I don't care about the money. I never have. I just want you. All of you." For the rest of my life, tears filled my eyes. For the first time in what felt like forever, I believed someone meant it. "Then you've got me," I whispered. Weeks later, he proposed. It wasn't flashy, not some over-the-top spectacle, just us, on the beach at sunset, the waves crashing behind us. He dropped to one knee, held out a simple ring, and asked me to be his forever. I said yes. Amber was the first family member I called. She cried when I told her, promised she'd stand by me, that she'd never let Mom and Dad drag her back into their schemes. I knew it would take time to rebuild our relationship, but it was a start. As for my parents and Luke, they cut me off completely after the appeal. No calls, no letters, no holiday invitations. At first, the silence was painful, like a wound that wouldn't heal. But over time, it became freedom. Because I realized something. Family isn't just the people you're born to. It's the people who stand by you, who love you for who you are, not for what you can give them. And I had that. In Ryan, in Amber, slowly but surely. In Kayla, who'd been my rock from the start. The money? It was just money. What mattered was that I'd survived, that I'd fought for myself, that I'd proven my grandparents right. I kept their letter in a frame on my nightstand, a reminder of why they chose me. Every morning I'd read those words. "We trust you to use this gift wisely, not for greed but for good." And I did. I set up scholarships in their name, donated to causes they cared about, invested in projects that would have made them proud. But more than that, I built a life worth living. A life on my own terms. I'm Christine. I'm 26 years old, and I survived losing my family to greed. I survived betrayal, fear, and manipulation. I survived being hunted for $30 million. And in the end, I found something worth far more. I found love. I found peace. I found myself